Hello, I'm chess expert Gil Luna. This ending is on rook versus bishop. All right, so in general, this position is drawn. Okay, rook versus bishop, but there are some exceptions. Sometimes the rook and king will force the other king into the corner, in which there can be a possible checkmate with some finessing. However, in this position, this is the wrong corner. All right, there's a right corner and a wrong corner for this type of endgame if you're trying to win this. All right, so you have a white square bishop and you have a black square in the corner. This makes it much easier to defend for black. So let's look at what's going on here. The king can't get out, but the one mate threat can be blocked by the bishop, and there's no real way to get the bishop out of there. So the idea would be to try to control either this diagonal with the king here or this diagonal with the king here. So let's go ahead and try the first move of rook check. So if rook check is played, then you can just block with the bishop. And now there's no way, either the king has to yield or the rook has to yield in order for this not to be stalemate, right? So we have a stalemate issue here. The king cannot get out. The bishop cannot move because the bishop is pinned by the rook. So we're stuck. So you have to yield something. So let's say you move the rook out of the way. Let's look at king g5 first. If you play king g5, then the king's just going to get out. And if you try to lock the king in, it's just going to go back. And as long as you maintain the bishop on this diagonal right now, there's nothing that white can do to make progress in this position. We're going to reach this position in a second by transposition. So let's go back. So we got rook check, bishop blocks, rook a7 up, and a bishop move. King over, and just move the bishop again. Rook check. All right. So once again, if you just make any random move, the bishop is going to just stay on this diagonal, block checks, and just come out. All right. So all you have to do to hold this position if you're black, and just keep that in mind. However, white decides to check here with rook h7. And now the king is forced to come out of the corner. So now what you do is the rook is going to harass the bishop. Now what you do is put the bishop on this diagonal. And now what happens is the king cannot go to g6 anymore for checkmate. And if this check comes in with the rook, the king can just escape. And once the king's back in the middle of the board, you're not going to do checkmate in this position. It has to be in one of the two corners, basically, to have a chance. It's not even guaranteed, even if you're in the right one. So bishop there, and the position is held. All right. Remember, there is a wrong corner, just like there is a bishop and bishop pawn promotion, rook pawn promotion, right corner and wrong corner. It's the same thing with the rook versus bishop. All right, so let's get to the next problem. The next problem is with the right corner, but this position is different. So here, basically, now look at the difference in this position. We have a black square bishop and we have a black square corner. Now, why does this make a difference? Well, the king cannot hide in the corner and block on g8 with the bishop because the bishop is a black square bishop, so it can only block here. And this makes a very big difference. Now, the safe zone for this bishop is back here behind the king. Now, why? Why am I calling this a safe zone? Like, what is the threat? Like, what would happen if my bishop was here, for example? All right, so let me show you. Let's say this bishop was here. Well, all you would have to do is play rook here, and you're threatening mate and the bishop. And that will work anywhere along here. Anywhere along here this bishop moves, the rook can attack it and threaten mate. All right, so keep that in mind. That's why I call it the safe zone behind the king. This way, there's no threatening to do checkmate and attack the bishop. So the rook is going to bother this bishop so that to kick it out of the safe zone. So here, same thing, we're safe. All right. Attacking the bishop. Bishop goes there, staying behind the king. Once again, let's say we did something like, let's say we did something like bishop here. And the rook would simply attack the bishop. All right, so let's say, okay, you're going to play bishop here and block. That's fine. Rook here. And only move, king over, and mate. A lot of these tricks work if the bishop is on the wrong spot, if the bishop comes out from the safe zone. So the rook is going to bother the bishop, the rook bothers the bishop, and we finally get here, and now the bishop has to leave the safe zone. Bishop d6. Now, you might be saying, well, I can go bishop f4, and there's no rook attacking the bishop and then checking on f8 because the king will just take it. You're right, but there's another issue with bishop f4. You play bishop f4 and try to figure out what happened next. All right, you play king f5, discover check, and the bishop is lost. All right, so bishop f4 is also not an option. All right, so bishop d6, and just like we saw in a previous example a few moves ago, we attack this bishop. The bishop's going to waste a tempo, try to stay off the back rank, and you can play rook c2, threatening the same thing that we just saw after the bishop moves. Rook here, and it's over. It's followed by king here and mate. Now, you have to be careful not to make a mistake here. Like, let's say in this position, you play rook to d7. All right? Let's say you play rook to d7. Believe it or not, this simple move actually draws the game. All right? This is a huge mistake. It looks logical because you say, can I reach the same position? Because now the bishop has to move, right? And then I can go here and reach the same position, and the bishop moves here. I go here, or I threaten mate. Same exact thing. We have the same problem, but there's one thing that you have to watch out for, and that's the king can go to f8. Once the king goes to f8, the king is coming out now. You can't stop the king from escaping. All right, the king's going to go here, and the king is going to escape. Remember, this endgame in general is a draw. So there are rare examples like the one we're looking at now, where you can actually win this. But if the king gets out and gets back towards the center of the board or goes to the opposite corner, remember this would be the right corner, white square, black square bishop, then the game is going to be drawn. So this simple mistake of rook d7 will actually draw the game for you. So you have to play everything, take your time and analyze everything and make sure you're not making a mistake like that. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned something and I hope you enjoyed this video.